Hello friends, and welcome to episode 61, the beginning of season number 2 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van, where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. I'm your host, Marty Benson, and I apologize, guys, that it's been so long. There's been a prolonged hiatus. I think I put the last episode of this podcast out in June of 2020. It is now late April of 2021. And I've been on hiatus. I was trying to do the podcast over Zoom. I wasn't really feeling it. We were dealing with the challenges of the coronavirus at the time, a little bit of depression that I think swept the entire globe, and I just sort of stopped doing the podcast. We cut it off at around even 60 episodes, and that felt good. I just didn't like interrupting people over Zoom. And so maybe I could have worked my way through it. Maybe I quit too early. But here we are. And there are no podcasts between then and now. But we're back, baby. This is season number 2. And episode 61, today's episode, features Ellie Hoover. She's a very good friend. One of the very few people that I met during the coronavirus quarantine lockdown sort of situation. She had basically been quarantined with some friends of ours, and we ended up part of their bubble for a little while because we had been traveling around not seeing anybody up in Oregon. Super interesting story how we met her. Colette's friend Emma, a childhood friend, they've been friends for a really long time from down in San Diego. She lives up in the Bay Area now, and her partner, Malcolm, has a sister who had moved into a van several months before, and she was brand new to the van life thing, had driven across the country, and her name was Ellie Hoover. Still is Ellie Hoover. Her name is still Ellie Hoover. Anyway, we heard about her when we were visiting them in the Bay Area. We went for a really nice couple of events, walks and stuff in Oakland while we were up there, and they were telling us this story about this woman, and we were like, oh, it'd be cool, if our paths cross. Sometimes that ends up working out through social media and the whatnot, and we were hoping to do that at some point. Well, we found her. The way that we found her, she happened to be hanging out with Jared Tachi and Shane Dennis, who have both been on the podcast, I think multiple times actually each. And she had connected with them, through social media and whatnot. And so we sort of landed in their bubble out in the dirt, like this dust lot on BLM land outside of Bend, Oregon. And we've been keeping in touch with her and sort of meeting up on our travels ever since. We caravanned down, sort of took some time away from her, and then met her and Emma and Malcolm down in Tahoe a few weeks after we originally met her. But I was able to catch up with her in Oceanside recently and finally record an episode of the podcast. I've got another one in the can. Spoiler alert. So there's actually going to be another podcast next week. You have my word. So thank you for tuning back in. I apologize if you care that there's been such a long hiatus from the van. I'm sure that we'll work out some of my issues and you'll get to hear about all of the tumult and stress that led to the podcast sort of stopping and then being reintroduced. But that's for another time, guys. This isn't about me. This is about Ellie. I hope that you enjoy the first episode of season 2 of From the Van, episode number 61, featuring Ellie Hoover. Ellie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We'll see. I hope that the audio works. If not, we'll have to do this again another time.
What a chore.
So you and I met in Bend, Oregon.
Yep.
Because Colette's super good friend from childhood is your brother's partner.
Yes.
And we all had a good time together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what are the odds of that, though?
Isn't that weird? We know this person who lives in a van.
Yeah, it was even weirder because Jared was like, hey, I have some friends that are going to come meet us at this spot. and they know you. And I was like, first of all, this meetup was like the first meetup on the entire, at that point I'd been on the road for 8 months, and I'd met 2 van lifers at that point. And this was the first time that I was meeting up with them, and I was like, finally, I'm making friends on the road. This is what I've always wanted. And then Jared is like, oh yeah, and they know you. And I'm like, how? I'm so many miles from my home. And then, yeah, he explained that, and I was like, wow, that is just amazing.
Wait, but they hadn't told you about us yet?
No.
Okay.
I think maybe Emma had mentioned, oh, I have some friends that live in vans, but like I feel like everybody knows somebody that lives in a van, and they're like, yeah, I know, I have a friend who lives in a van, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool. But then it just like all happened right there, and I was like, wow.
It's a weirdly small community, right? Mm-hmm. And you've sort of like,
now I've learned
you've
that.
sort of bloomed and blossomed, right? You know a bunch of people in the van community now?
Oh, 100%. I think I have more friends now than I did before I lived in a van.
You mean more friends, period?
Yeah, 100%. And really it's only just like 3 more.
Oh, yeah.
I only know 3 more people.
Weirdo is your cult.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Cool. So, because we didn't see them in Bend. We met you a month before, 3 weeks before or something.
Yeah.
That we met up with them in Tahoe.
Yes.
And you and them in Tahoe.
Right.
All right, well, let's jump back after the train passes. Where are you from?
I am from DC, kind of.
Kind of?
Yeah. So my parents worked for the government, and so we traveled and lived abroad. So I was born in Egypt, grew up in Ukraine, but I would call DC home.
Okay. What do your parents do?
So my dad is now retired. He's been retired basically my whole life.
Nice for him.
Oh, 100%. So he's 20 years older than my mom.
Okay.
So he was 52 when I was born. So now he's 82. And he worked for the World Bank, which we as the children are convinced that he was a spy.
I was going to say, you're putting air quotes around the World Bank, which you can't see if you're listening to this.
Yes, because he laughs it off every time we bring it up. Like, oh yeah, you're a spy. He's like, ah ha ha ha, yeah right, oh no, not me. But like everything just doesn't add up. There's too many weird things. Every place that we lived as a kid, like there's civil unrest after we left. And all sorts of things, and he was in project development, but he's a trained astrophysicist by trade, but got into city planning, if there's air quotes around that as well. And so he always worked with the mayors and all of the officials, and our phone lines were tapped when we lived in Ukraine by the KGB, and so like all sorts of just like weird things that don't add up.
You know that for a fact.
Yeah.
The phone lines
you would pick up the phone and there would be like a click, and then you could then make the call and stuff like that. So we definitely knew all of that, and he was always very well versed with the upper management of cities and different places that we lived. So definitely some weird things there. And then my mom, she is a climate scientist now. She works for NOAA, and she spent most of her career fighting for better environmental conditions and for us to be acting more like adults.
Okay, so she was sort of offsetting the civil wars that your dad was starting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, power duo, go on.
Crazy. So your parents are both losers.
Yeah, totally.
And
then their daughter just lives in a van. Isn't that great?
What have you been up to? What's your story?
So
how many languages do you speak?
I grew up speaking, I learned English, Ukrainian, and Russian all at the same time, and then I spoke all of those fluently. And then once we moved back to the States, I relatively quickly lost the Russian and Ukrainian and just stuck with the English. And then I took a year off in between high school and college and lived in St. Petersburg, Russia, and just to see if I could relearn Russian, and I did. And now, of course, it's been 10 years since then, so now I'm like slowly losing that as well. But so mostly just English now. But I went to college and got a degree in biology and psychology, and don't use either of them, so that was really great, just a very expensive piece of paper. But then I went into sales And before I moved into a van, I managed all the sales for a local brewery in the DC area.
Okay.
And then that just got too hectic, and that was just very much fully consuming. Anyone who's done sales knows that it's just like a dog-eat-dog world, and it can really completely take over your life, and that it definitely did. And then I just kind of reached a limit where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'd been looking at tiny homes for a really long time, but that seemed really overwhelming. And then a friend of mine had a van that he partially converted, and I was like, wait, this is a whole next level of things. And so then I started looking into that, and I would think, let's see, I heard about the vans in July, and I started my build in November.
Okay.
So it was like that quick of a turnaround.
Super fast.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to hear about the whole van decision and that process, but why, something you said that is interesting to me, why are tiny homes too much and vans make sense?
It's like a whole house. You gotta have like walls and roof, and you gotta like, you know, have way more complicated plumbing, and so many more like things have to run off of the electrical system. And like, as someone who has never done any like serious building, that always felt just out of reach.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that'd be really nice, but like, I think that in reality, it's too difficult as a beginner project.
Yeah.
And so then I found van life, and I was like, oh, everything's much smaller, even smaller than a tiny house. So
Right.
it's like just a little bit of plumbing and just a little bit of electrical. And so like, I felt like that was doable. So.
That's interesting. My attitude about tiny homes, coming from like cycling advocacy, has always been like, if you have a tiny home, you can only afford that land out in the woods, so you have to have a car to get everywhere, which is just as big as almost as your tiny home. But I like your deal, because basically what you're saying is, when you buy the van, the walls and the roof are already waterproof and sturdy, and
right.
now you just basically have to do the guts of the house.
Well, I mean, speak for yourself. Your roof was not leaking. My roof was leaking. But that just took a little bit of silicone and aluminum tape, whereas like in a tiny house, you have to build like an actual roof from scratch.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
that's that. But yeah.
Okay, so July of, what is this, 2019?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, vans. And then
like I think I Pinterest it for like, I don't know, a week, and I was like, yeah, it's happening.
Okay.
And I like immediately found this van and was like, yep, sold. And like really was like such a noob when it came to buying my van.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I got it for a really good price, which now I'm thankful for, but like immediately had to put like $3,000 into mechanical stuff, you know, and like get all that fixed. But now I know that it's like, it was completely worth it. And like all the stress that I had the whole time of being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm gonna have to spend $1,200 on a refrigerator,
Right.
you know? And it's like, you know, all this stress, and now I'm like, oh, I would do that 5 times over. I
Sure.
have like the best fridge. Like I have a freezer, I can have ice cream, I can have, you know, ice. So like, it's just really interesting, the build and the stress that comes with all the things that you think are gonna matter so much later. And then you get on the road and you're like, I don't even care. This is great. I'm
Yeah.
happy with everything that I have.
Yeah. So how did the build process go? Like, was it all you? Did you have family help?
I worked
You had a
a
buddy
little bit.
that's a carpenter? What's the deal?
I had some help with my dad. So
Okay.
he
The
built,
city planner
Yeah, right, exactly.
slash World Bank.
Slash everything. Like he has a off the grid house that he built in the mountains of North Carolina, and so he's a solar like master. So
Yeah.
he definitely helped with all the solar stuff, all that stuff. And then, you know, he's on the older side, so some of the actual physical building stuff he couldn't do, so that's really where I came in. But he helped like organize a lot of the stuff and like tell me, okay, this is what you're gonna have to do with this. This is, you know how you're gonna do that. But yeah, most of the building and all that stuff I did by myself. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but it took me 2.5 months, which at the time I thought was forever. Because I had read in one article somewhere on the internet, which must have been true, that you could build a van in 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, that's easy, I can do that. And then I actually started doing it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know who said that.
2.5 months is actually really fast. Most
That's
people's
what I've
first
heard.
builds, I did my first build in 2.5 months, but that's because I'm a maniac. Like,
Yeah.
I have problems.
Yeah. We know.
But, yeah, 2.5, most of the people you talk to, they're like 6, 8 months, a year, or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, now I'm in all these Facebook groups and on social media, and so I have people that are like, oh yeah, I'm a year into my build, and I'm, maybe halfway through, and I'm like, wow, and I mean, to be fair, I was very fortunate in the fact that in working sales, I had saved up a very good amount of money where I could just quit my job and build 7 days a week.
Right.
And so, that's the only way I was actually able to do that. If there's tons of people that are building during the, they have a full-time job and they're building, and I'm like, wow, that's impressive. So, yeah, now I know that that's really fast.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I was like, gosh, this is taking forever. I'm never gonna get on the road. So.
Where's your family at in all of this? Just sort of like in terms of psychologically and their support of the thing?
I am the luckiest person ever. It was my mom's idea.
Okay.
Everyone always asks, what did your mom think, you being homeless? Which I always think is funny, because it's like, we're not homeless, we're houseless, or whatever you want to say.
Right.
But she was the one who was like, you're unhappy with your job, you've been talking about this van life thing, just do it. You have money saved up, why not just do it? And I was like, you know what, you're right. I only live once. Out of the two of us, I'm the very conservative one. Mm-hmm. So I'm the one who's always like, yeah, but I'm not going to have a job right away, or I'm not going to have this, or I'm not going to have that. And she was just like, so what?
Yeah.
Go live your life. Go explore. Go, do it. And I'm so thankful for that. I've learned so many things from living in a van that I would probably have never learned if I had continued just living my regular life. Mm-hmm. So
tell us about your van.
So
what's the deal with your van?
I have a 2005 Dodge Sprinter, and it is a rust bucket, which I love because it looks like a painter's van on the outside and no one messes with me. So, yeah, it had 188,000 miles on it when I bought it, and it's a diesel, so that's not anything. And it is the 156 wheelbase, so that in those years that Dodge made it, that would be equivalent to the 170 new.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just that same amount. I have 13 and a half feet of living space inside.
Nice.
And I have the one major thing that people criticize me for in my build is that I have the front walled off from the back. So for me to get to my living space, I have to physically get out of my van and walk over.
Right.
And so a lot of people hate on that because they're like, oh, as a solo female traveler, how could you do that? It's so unsafe. And what if you have to escape these terrible situations in the middle of the night? And I want to know where these people are camping, what they're doing, and why they feel like they need to be fearful of things in the middle of the night, because I have yet, knock on wood, to have these terrible, awful experiences that I need to escape from in the middle of the night. But aside from that, I've learned that also it's a huge temperature barrier. Mm-hmm. So it can be blazing hot in the front of the van, but because I have it walled off, the back of the van stays nice and cool because it's super insulated. So that has helped significantly with heat. And then also, for me, I feel like it's a safety feature because if someone is gonna break into my van, they're most likely doing petty theft. They think that there's, tools or something in the front of it or something. And so the only way, because I have no windows, they will have to break the front window, and then they can't get to the back. And I can hear that someone's breaking my windshield or my window, and I can climb out the back door.
Right.
And so I actually find it to be a safety feature.
Well, and with 13 feet, I mean, my cargo space in the van is 10 feet.
Yeah.
And so you've got basically everything to my dash in the back anyway, so you have plenty of space.
Yeah, right. I don't need the captain's chairs because I have a whole dinette plus my bed. So, I have a fixed bed. And then I also have benches and a pull-out dining room table. So for me, I don't need the captain's chairs or anything like that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Technically speaking, let's talk about what's in your van. We'll start with the electrical system. What do you have?
Yeah, so I have 320 on in the panels, and then I have a 1,000-watt inverter, and I have a 200 amp hour AGM battery.
Okay.
And so I chose to do AGM because it was much more price efficient for me. And there's some things that I've read that with lithium ion that's they don't operate very well in extreme temperatures. And so for me, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense I'm going to be driving around in very hot temperatures and very cold, so I wanted to kind of go with the more sealed battery option. So I did that. And yeah, I calculated, for me, I have a propane 2-burner stove, so I don't need to run any kind of heavy electrical loads, so 1,000 watts works for me, and I have never been even low on power. So the only things that I run on that are like charging electronics, which are minimal, the puck lights, which are also nothing, and then the 2 main things that draw power on there are going to be the refrigerator, which I have one of the biggest Dometic 65 fridges. So
and that's the 2-zone. You got the freezer on one side,
and then the fridge on the other, and then the fan, the ceiling fan. So I have a Maxair, fantastic fan. I guess it's just Maxair fan. And so those 2 things draw the most power, but even with that, I rarely struggle for power at all.
Sure. Well, and those top loader fridges are super duper efficient.
Oh,
too.
Absolutely.
I think your huge fridge probably takes less power than our front loading. It's also a Dometic. It's a good fridge, but they're just not nearly as efficient.
Yeah, I think when it's running, if I remember now, it's been so long since I've done the calculation, but I think it's around 5 amps.
Yeah.
So
pretty low.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how I can't remember anything in my van, and I built it less than a year, almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah,
it's almost like Ukrainian or Russian.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's just like you don't have any use for it anymore, so it's like it just goes away.
You've got an L-shaped countertop situation. What all is in there?
Yeah, so I chose, by closing it off, my big reason for that is that I wanted more kitchen space, and so I have the L-shaped kitchen, which allows me to have 10 gallons of gray water and a relatively big sink, so I can actually do dishes and feel like I'm doing dishes in a regular house.
Yeah.
As opposed to most van people that are hunching over a tiny little round sink where it's so you don't even want to do dishes. And so that was one of the main reasons to have enough space to put that and to have a big enough fridge. And then on top of that, I have tons of storage. So I have drawers. I have 6 drawers, 3 on either side, which allow me to just keep everything that I need. And then I have just the 2-burner cooktop on top, and then I have tons of space where I can cut vegetables. 2 people can really cook in my kitchen, which is very rare.
Yeah, that's special.
So someone can be chopping and someone can be cooking, and that was really, not that I have 2 people, but it was just convenient, and I wanted the space. My big thing when I was building my van was I started off with a list of must-haves so that there was no reason to not want to live in the van.
Right.
And so that's the biggest advice that I give to people before you go on this endeavor is make sure you have a list of things that you love about your current living situation, and make sure you can translate them to living in the van. Otherwise, you're going to end up not wanting to do dishes because your sink was too small, or not wanting to cook in your van, so you're buying your meals out all the time, and all of a sudden you're bleeding money because you don't actually like to do the things that you want to do inside your van, so you're accommodating by spending more money outside. And then it's just that doesn't really make the lifestyle very feasible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of people, I think, move into vans specifically to cut corners.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a kind of a dangerous reason to get into.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. If you want to live in van life because you don't want to pay rent and you just think that this is the easiest option, but you hate camping, or you have a strong affiliation to having to be on a street that you're uncomfortable. There's all these little things that people don't think about. If you don't like camping, you most likely aren't going to love living in a van.
Right.
You can get away with it. There's tons of people that do city camping, and then that's it, and that's totally fine. But not everyone is set out for van life. Mm-hmm. And I think that right now we're in an environment where Instagram is promoting this almost false experience of van life where it's beautiful and everything is perfect and nothing goes wrong.
Right.
And look how clean my van is all the time. It's never like that.
Right.
You're gonna have hardships. You're gonna struggle, and if you don't think about those things and plan for them ahead of time, it's just you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, you said that I want to know, for my own purposes, I want to know what you did in case I ever have a roof leak. Was it just like aluminum flashing? Is that what it is, or?
Yeah, so there's metal seams on all of these vans.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
I've got those too, yeah.
Definitely on the older ones. And so I have 3 seams that run the back, and those seams wear out after a while, and this is a 2005, so, you know, the sun beats down on it and, you know, rust and all sorts of stuff. So I went up first with silicone, and I rubbed silicone all the way across, and all 3 of the seams were leaking when I got it.
Wow.
And so I rubbed silicone all across the 3, and then I bought, like, HVAC aluminum tape. And that stuff is amazing for anything that you ever need it. Any leaking, like, it is perfect, but it is sticky. So, like, you gotta be really careful. So, like,
can't get it back off.
You can't. It is like, you will basically have to cut it or just, like, rip it. But yeah, so then I just put it across the top of that, and so that protects the silicone, because silicone will, you know, degrade after. Yeah. So I put that on top, so that kind of protects it. And I have not had a single leak.
Great.
Knock on wood.
Wonderful. Are there any regrets about your van or your specific build? Anything that you would change?
I talk about this a lot with other van life friends, and I really don't have any, like, big thing that I would change about my build. I really love my layout. I think that it accommodates everything. The only thing that I ever find myself, like, really missing is sometimes just the accessibility to a regular flush toilet or a regular actual shower. But, like, that's so rare, because I have a portable, like, cassette toilet, and I chose to have that specifically for safety reasons. I didn't want to have to leave the van to go out and pee in the middle of the night if I didn't want to, things like that. And you helped me make a super efficient version of my shower.
Does it work? We haven't
Yes.
talked about it in a few months.
Oh my gosh, it's
great.
like the best thing ever. And
I love it, man.
I love it. And
Yeah.
so I have it attached to my on-demand water heater, so
Yeah.
that's super great. And as long as it's not cold outside. So, like, winter has been one of those things where you're like, wow, you have a great setup where you can take a shower inside.
Inside. So
I
you're
haven't
just doing it
figured
out the
that
back?
Yeah, I haven't figured that out fully yet. But I just need to dedicate some time and, like, figure out, you know, how I want to make that work inside my van. But so that's, like, in the winter is, like, one of those only times where I'm like, dang, I really wish I had access to, like, a shower, you know? But I actually have 2 shower options now, kind of. So I also invested and bought a, like, solar shower, but one of these ones that, like, is pressurized and stands up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got that for, like, more ease of, like, washing, like, my boots off or my shoes, or, like, being able to do other stuff. You know, I got tattoos recently, and that's been super useful to just be able to, like, I keep it in the front seat, and you just let it, and you it sits outside all day, and, like, it actually gets warm.
Gets good and warm.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so then, like, I've been able to easily, and you pressurize it with a foot pump, so that's really great. And so that has been able to, like, make taking care of tattoos on the road super, super easy. And so that kind of gives 2 options. Like, if I don't want to set up the whole shower in the back, because for me, I hang the shower curtain, and then I connect the propane, and I do all this stuff to get that shower to, like, take a real nice hot shower in the back. Whereas this, like, I can leave outside and have that as an option at the end of the day when I go for a hike and I just want to rinse off and not worry about it. So having 2 options is kind of nice. And then the third would be going and paying for a shower somewhere.
Right.
Or bumming one off of a friend.
Sure. So what's going on now? What are you up to these days?
So the last several months I've been bumming it in San Diego area, Encinitas, and then as van life happens, I guess, you know, with the community, you meet people. So I met, actually because of you and Colette, I met a lovely man, and so now we've been spending some time together, and he also lives in a van, so that's been super convenient. We have basically like a 2-bedroom house wherever we go.
Nice.
And so we are actually leaving tomorrow to go on a big long trip.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's the plan? What's the purpose of the trip?
purpose of the trip is to just enjoy our vans. He's had a van for a long time and has not done any like real travel in it, so he wants to do that, and of course I just want to go and see cool new things.
Yeah.
But our plan is to go now like northern Arizona into New Mexico and then over into Texas and then pop up over through Colorado and then go into Oregon, and then hopefully by then it'll be nice and warm, we can go into Washington, and then maybe the borders will be not so terrible.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm not sold on it, but maybe, fingers crossed, we can drive through and into Alaska if that's possible, but...
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that when the van build happened, you had money saved up and you could just sort of dedicate time to building the van. What are you doing for work on the road?
So I started van consulting,
Okay.
and so I've been helping a lot of people with their builds, and my main goal was to, getting a van that's built for you right now is very inflated. The costs for people are so high.
Sure.
You see people turn vans around and sell them for, over $100K. And people buy them, and that's great. But there's a lot of people that really desire this lifestyle, have no idea where to start, and just need like small basic help.
You mean everybody doesn't have $100,000 sitting around?
It's wild, right? And I mean, it's such an interesting market dynamic if you think about it, because I think my build in total, including the cost of my van, was right around $15K.
Wow.
So I got my van for $5,000 and I put about $7,000 in, and then had like $3,000 worth of mechanical stuff that I had to have done. And then I hit the road. And so that's totally feasible and doable for most people if you do the research and like learn, and then maybe have somebody help you. What I recommend to a lot of people is to do a lot of the building. All the building in these are very simple building. You can learn how to build a box, and make a bench, and then you can figure out how to make a bed and things like that. And like for me, I bought my cabinets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you built your cabinets, and I was like, I don't want to deal with that.
In retrospect, I think it was a mistake, to be honest, because you can retrofit them. Did you retrofit yours? You cut the back corner off or something?
Well, no, I customed the upper cabinets. But the kitchen cabinets I just bought from IKEA.
Yeah.
Because the cool thing about IKEA is they sell two different depth cabinets as lower cabinets.
Okay.
So they sell 15-inch depth, which normally is just an upper cabinet. But, and then they do the regular 24 or whatever, 24.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do both that way. But yeah, I think it cost me $500 to buy all the cabinets. And I have a ton of cabinets.
I gotta say that some of the stuff that I've bought to put together from IKEA over the years, it would have been easier for me to just build the thing, man.
Well, that's because you don't like reading instructions.
Oh my God, I got a bed frame like 5 years ago with 6 years ago or something with my then girlfriend. And I think one of my buddies had given me some Adderall. We'd been drinking beers. And I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go home. I had like an Adderall. And I was like, I'm gonna go put this bed thing together. And I could not, I spent 5 hours just like chewing on my teeth trying to figure out what was going on. I couldn't put that thing together for anything.
Oh, no, I don't know. As long as you take the time and read the instructions, I don't understand what people have issues with IKEA stuff. But I do use...
Okay, reader.
I do use setting up IKEA furniture as a pretty new testing of a relationship. Like, I'll be like, look, we just need to go to IKEA and buy a piece of furniture and set it up before I can go on this other date with you. Because then you're like, no, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah. Back in the day, I used to, as a cycling advocate and public transportation advocate, even when I did have a car, I would take you on the first date, like old school style, pick you up at your house, take you to dinner, and the next one was on the bus. And
you're like, we ain't doing this again.
If you can't handle it, you are not supposed to go on a date with me, man.
I mean, but that's it. People like to just like fake it, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't understand why the relationship didn't work out.
Yeah.
You weren't yourself, but yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, I mean, it's the best thing, living in a van. What can I say?
How long is it gonna go? Do you see an end to it? Or?
Yeah, I do, because I really want, the actual one thing that I miss the most about not having like land or a house or whatever is gardening. And it's just not something that you can feasibly do in a van.
Sure.
And so I want to. Oregon has my heart right now. I guess that could change depending on if we go somewhere that I haven't been and just fall in love. But I want to buy some property in Oregon, and I actually want to put a tiny house on it and then have other little like cottages and things that people can come and rent, and like have parts of the land be associated to van lifers who just want a place to spend the night, or a campground or something like that. So just kind of building that community around tiny living in Oregon or someplace similar to that. So I definitely do see an end at some point, but I will probably live in the van for another year or two.
Okay. Weirdos are your cult.
Oh, 100%.
You're gonna build a commune, you hippie.
Yes, 100%. I'm bringing it back, okay? Because so we were in Arizona, and I found a place online for us to stay. We'd been like boondocking and camping out in like BLM land, and I was like, wow, this place is cool. They have like a pool, and they got a hot tub, and they've got like hot outdoor showers, and it has like all these cute things. And I was like, let's just go spend whatever it was, $20 for us to spend the night there. So we drove, we parked there, we meet the guy, and he's like, yeah, so you know the history about this place? And I was like, no, what? And he goes, oh yeah, this is Timothy Leary's old commune. And I was like, get out.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is so cool. He's like, yeah, walk around. Like the prayer house is still here. The communal like play. He was like, he bought it, and then it took him 4 years to restore all the old buildings. But like we walked around, and it was so cool. And I was like, this is my dream. Like this is what I want. I want to have like this kind of.
Where is this?
Just in the middle of nowhere in Arizona.
I need to go to this place.
Yeah, I'll send you.
I have to go prepared with psychedelics.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we absolutely did. We were like, think of how many psychedelics have been done on this property. But it was so cool. But yeah, it was like, I'll send you the deets.
Cool.
But yeah, and the guy just said I mentioned to the owner, I was like, oh man, this is like my dream. And he was like, oh, I just sold it 2 days ago.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, no. But
you
it was
want
like,
to build it yourself anyway.
Yeah, I want to make my own hippie commune.
And the world needs more of those places anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. So stay tuned.
Yeah. I keep wondering how viable that sort of thing is. Like I grew up in the 90s. I was in high school in the 90s in South Carolina, which is like a very like old school place. And it was the same thing. I think of communes the same way I think about like for-profit skate parks. Of course, in Southern California, there's one everywhere that the city built to keep the kids from vandalizing other properties and stuff. And that's great. But if you actually need to run one for profit, I wonder how viable a business model it is. If you have the land and you're just sort of like down to help foster the community, that's one thing. But I wonder.
I don't think it's necessarily viable in the sense that you're definitely not going to like go off and get rich from it. But I think that a cool thing that you can do, it's all about marketing, how you market it, right?
Sure.
So if you build enough like places that people can come and rent, like for an Airbnb or for whatever, and you market it as a place where people could come rent out the whole space for a wedding, say, or something, you know, like, so there's definitely ways. I don't think that it could necessarily be like your sole business. I mean, I think there probably is a way that you could make it happen. But like for me, what was cool about that property was there was a main house where the guy lived, and it was a 3-bedroom house, and he wasn't using it. He was just living in it. And I was like, you could make that a small bed and breakfast. Right. You know what I mean? And like people come and do that stuff and pay $150 a night to come stay, you know? And so things
that's cheap
like
for a hotel room.
Right. And so if there's like different things, and like there were like different little like almost like, I wouldn't call them like it was not like a hut, but like a bungalow, like little like 2-bedroom like little houses that people could rent. And it's like stuff like that. If it's not just a campground or not just, you know, a place for people to come park their rigs, if it's some kind of mixture of things and it's in a beautiful place, I think you can definitely rent it out and have people, you know, really live off of it.
Well, there's that place. Do you know about this place in Big Sur? It's called Esalen.
Mm-mm.
It's every girl that I'm incompatible with is like into it because it's like some swanky like mineral hot spring sort of thing in Big Sur.
It's like an Instagram thing.
But it's like super expensive. Yeah, dude. You can take a picture of your toes and butt in there and get like hella likes, you know?
My favorite is like you go to these hot springs, these natural hot springs that are like gorgeous and like built on the side of a mountain, and you're sitting there and you're like, this is great. And then inevitably there's like a girl who's like, shows up, she's sitting in a swimsuit, and then she's like, can you take a picture of me? And she takes off her top just for the picture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you want to be topless, just be topless. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, just pick one or the other, but don't just do it for the gram. Come on.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that kind of environment. And I think that right now, because of COVID and like how much everybody's realizing that they don't have to be in an office, the like remote working lifestyle is going to keep on after COVID is done. And so,
I really hope so.
Yeah. With that, people are leaving, you're watching people like leaving in herds from California, being like, I don't have to be right here right now, I can go work from Texas or Oregon or whatever. And so I think that and there is right now a surge of people that are wanting to live in vans. You know, it really has it has been very, I don't know, eye-opening. I think it's really cool. I think it's going to be a great movement for people to just... I think tiny living in general is so important because you don't need so much stuff and you don't need so much space. And maybe a van doesn't work for somebody or a family, or something like that. So like the tiny houses now that you have though are like beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find some that are just like spectacular that can have a family of 4 living in a tiny house and comfortable and everyone has their own space. So I don't know. I think we'll see what happens, but I'm hopeful for that kind of lifestyle. I can't imagine going back to like live in like a big house. Like,
Right.
What do I need? What am I gonna do with all this space?
Yeah.
So.
Well, is there anything you think we haven't covered?
I have a cat. Let's
talk about Moose. Let's talk about Moose. And you shut up, Span. Go sit down. Go sit down.
Yeah, I travel with a cat,
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of people don't do that.
He's rad. He's 10. He's got a half mustache.
He's almost 11.
Oh.
I know. He's got a half stash. Yeah, his name is Moose. Full name is Mustachio, but he goes by Moose. It's his street name. And he goes kayaking with me. He goes hiking with me. He does all the things. So
Nice.
yeah. And like a lot of people ask me about that. Well, how do you travel with a cat? I'm sure people ask you that too. How do you guys travel with pets? And like our vans are temperature controlled, for one. So a lot of people mistake that and they think it's like a regular car, but it's not. And when it's too hot, I take them with me.
Sure.
I put them in a backpack and I take them into Walmart and no one messes with me. But yeah, it's rad. I couldn't imagine living this lifestyle without him.
Yeah.
Like, what would I do without him?
He's your dude.
Yeah.
He's a super chill cat, too.
So
like,
chill.
Spin, I think, would not have been cool with him, except that for our cat, Guinness. Yeah. And Moose just wasn't fazed by him.
Yeah,
like, even at the beginning,
whatever.
he was kind of like not super interested in him, but he wasn't stressed out about Spin being in his face.
The second I got him, I started taking him to breweries because I worked in the restaurant industry, and so we would go sit on the patios of here, and I was like, if you're gonna let dogs on your patio, you're gonna let cats on the patio.
Right.
So I was that crazy cat lady out here walking my cat, and so he's been like super familiar with dogs his whole life, and now he's just old, and he's like, whatever, you're gonna be all weird about it. I'm just gonna sit over here.
Just unimpressed.
Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
Right. Well, do you have anything you want to plug?
Check me out on Instagram. The Instagram handle is @the_moose caboose, and if you need any consultations on your van, shoot me a message. Everything goes through my Instagram, so that's kind of where that's at. And then I'm thinking about playing with making a YouTube.
Cool.
Don't hold me to it, but we'll see.
Sweet. Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
We'll see how the audio is. Did you notice when those 3 kids walked by, I turned around to look, I thought there were like 19 of them.
Yes.
And I was like,
oh, there's only
it's not a gaggle. It's a small family.
Yeah, I think a good portion of it will be alright. Yeah.
For the most part. We'll see.
It'll work.
Let's drink another beer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, we did it. Hooray! It's a new episode of the podcast in the books. That was episode 61 of From the Van featuring Ellie Hoover. I hope that you enjoyed it. It's always great to sit down and talk to her. We'll probably have her back on the podcast in a few months or something because every time that we hang out, something new is revealed. And, they're on a huge trip right now, she and her man. And they're caravanning, so I'm sure that they're going to have a grip load of stories to tell when we catch back up with them. Maybe we'll have a joint episode with both of them on the podcast at the same time. At any rate, I really appreciate it if you've hung on this long and you're still listening. And I really appreciate it if you have listened to From the Van before and you dealt with the hiatus for this long and still chose to tune back in. That's really special. And if you're new to From the Van, welcome! There's a shitload of old episodes for you to listen to, so go back and do that if you feel like it. And we will see you next week, I promise, for another episode of From the Van.